Coming up on Paris on Politics.
The Biden campaign in make or break mode as the president hits Wisconsin.
I'm staying in the race.
An Illinois congressman and Governor Pritzker lukewarm on whether Biden can still beat Trump. Chicago's ticking financial time bomb about to go off. And sticker shock, why some South suburban residents see their property tax bills more than double. Paris on Politics is next.
This is Paris on Politics from Fox 32 Chicago.
Thanks for joining us, Chicago. This is Paris on Politics. I'm Paris Schutz. Each week, we bring you analysis of the biggest political stories, whether they come from the back rooms of City Hall or out on the street in the neighborhoods. And tonight, all eyes on President Joe Biden. Can he resurrect his flagging campaign, or will the party push him out in favor of someone else? The president aims to quell some of those doubts with a national interview tonight and a rally in the battleground state of Wisconsin. Here's Fox 6 Milwaukee reporter Jason Calvi.
With his political future on the line,
I am running and going to win again.
President Joe Biden tries to rebound.
I'm staying in the race.
He makes that pledge in a 15-minute speech at Sherman Middle School in the Democratic stronghold Madison, 1 week after a debate Democrats called devastating.
When you get knocked down, you get back up. And I'm not letting one 90-minute debate wipe out 3.5 years of work.
After last week's debate, some Democrats suggested the president should step down from the race. We spoke before the rally with Biden supporters.
Do you think he's up for the challenge of running in the fall?
I think I'm undecided on that component, but support the party as a whole and think there are some great options, whether Biden and the cabinet that he's surrounded himself with continues to go forward.
The debate performance was concerning, but anyone can have an off day.
Yeah, I'm supporting him, but I was a little worried after the debate.
After the rally, Luke Pearson said he was reassured.
I was happy to see him so strong and definitive.
Across the street, we found Dex, who said he won't vote for Biden.
He's too old, man. I don't know, I just feel like we need somebody better, though. Somebody who's able to speak for themselves.
The president tried to calm fears, rallying hundreds.
Because we're going to win Wisconsin.
The president firing up his base in this deep Democratic stronghold of Dane County as he says he's in it to win it, going all the way to the convention in Chicago and then to the White House back in 2025. In Madison, Jason Calvi, Fox 32 Chicago.
And also this week, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, a top Biden surrogate, visited the White House as the president seeks to shore up support. This comes after Pritzker went on national television to express some of his lukewarm feelings about whether or not Biden could carry the nomination across the finish line. Absolutely not. That's White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre's answer to the question, is Biden considering quitting the race?
He's moving forward as being president. He's moving forward with his campaign, as his campaign has been very, very clear about that.
But lagging poll numbers have top Democrats, including Governor J.B. Pritzker, openly questioning whether Biden can carry the nomination across the finish line.
I think that there's a healthy discussion going on within the Democratic Party. We're not a cult like the MAGA Republicans. We tolerate dissent, and we think it's good for democracy to have this conversation.
Jean-Pierre defended Biden's comments that he was jet-lagged from official overseas travel during last week's debate, even though he had been back stateside for 12 days.
There's a cold, there's a jet lag. You combine that, he continues to work for the American people day in and day out, around the clock.
Pritzker and other top Democrats have insisted the decision is Biden's alone. Pritzker openly asking the president to speak out more to reassure the public.
We haven't heard a lot from him since the debate, and that's why the polls look as they do. I think that when you come off a bad debate, you need to remind people why you're the right guy to elect.
Jean-Pierre acknowledges the calls to communicate in an unscripted setting and says that's coming, starting with an ABC News interview on Friday.
He's going to be taking some questions from one of your colleagues. I think that's going to be important, and we're going to continue to engage with all of you. We're going to certainly looking forward to doing that. He'll have a press conference next week.
Meanwhile, rare silence from Republican nominee Donald Trump, whose convictions in the New York hush money case and pending criminal trials have taken a back seat in the campaign for the moment. And we're joined now by Congressman Mike Quigley of the 5th Congressional District here in Illinois, which encompasses much of Chicago's north and northwest sides. Congressman Quigley, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be back.
So you've seen polling now showing that Biden did take a hit after that debate. There are reports of anxious donors, reports of a call with Democratic governors who are anxious about the direction forward. Do you believe right now that Joe Biden is the best chance for Democrats to beat Donald Trump in November and keep the White House?
I think it probably takes a week or so for legitimate polling to be conducted to assess the situation, given what happened last Thursday. So it's more complicated and all that. We've got the 4th of July holiday. But look, I think we have to be honest with ourselves. This wasn't just a bad night at the debate. There are very real concerns, and you have to take the voters for where they are, not where you want them to be. The sad part of all this was the debate wasn't able to show something about President Trump, right? That he wants to be a dictator the first day in office. His quote, the fact the Supreme Court gave him literally the keys to the kingdom to do just that, and the contrast between the Biden administration's term and the President Trump's term. So we lost all those opportunities, and that was a real problem for all of us in the polling as well.
And you mentioned it wasn't just one bad debate night, because that was bad debate night. That was the spin afterward, but the concerns around this president is he isn't out in the public very often. He isn't answering a lot of questions. He hasn't done it before. He hasn't done it very much since. So it went to the central concerns about his age and about his acuity at this point. Can folks just say it's just one bad night and not be concerned about the bigger picture?
I don't think so. I think this is a bigger problem than that. But in the end, it's really the decision that rests with only one person, and that's President Biden. He has to come to terms with that. And if I were to talk to him, what I would say is this was a tough race. This is going to be a much tougher race as time goes on. You were down in certain states. That hasn't changed, got worse in some. So we've got to make a decision. One he alone has to make. What's really sad for me in assessing all this is he took us from a very dark place. The days after January 6th, where Trump incited a violent coup attempt on our country, and he took us out of the pandemic, out of this march away from the rule of law to a very good place. He helped save Ukraine, move the economy forward, awesome on choice, on gun issues and so forth. He's really had one of the most successful presidencies in my lifetime. And so I think what he has to appreciate is that should be his legacy.
Is Biden your best chance to accomplish those things, or is someone else your best chance?
Yeah, right now, my focus is on communicating with the public and understanding where we are and finding out where the president's going to go. You know, we've probably got another week till we have a full assessment of what the situation is. He makes that decision, and whatever he decides to do, we move forward.
Tell me about the discussions that are happening within your party. Again, there's all kinds of rumors, all kinds of reports about anxious phone calls with donors, anxious phone calls with Democratic governors. What are you hearing?
Well, look, this is a presidential, a time in our history where presidents win by 60 or 70,000 votes. Trump won by fewer voters in 3 states. They could fill Soldier Field, right? So it's a very small number of folks who make those decisions. The House of Representatives probably has 40 contested races the way the world works now, and those races are all going to be decided by a point or two. So if you're looking for angst, it's everywhere, regardless of the situation. Throw in the perceptions of not just what happened that night, but what happens afterwards. Sure, there are a lot of concerned members.
If the president does indeed choose to step aside, tell me what a process would look like to replace him as the nominee.
Yeah, because it's never happened in memory. So it's hard to assess. You know, and I don't want to go into who would do this or that. our democracy has always survived challenges like this. We have a legitimate process within our party, within our country, to succeed when people decide not to go forward. So I have every faith that if there was a change in any part of our party or any party in this country, that there's a legitimate process to move forward that the American people would understand.
Who's going to decide all that? Will you be in on meetings on that, the former president?
There are rules to how this goes forward. And again, I'm not there yet. I'm focused on, right now, President Biden is our nominee, and we're moving forward with that understanding. If that changes, I think our country, our party is prepared.
And that could make for a very interesting DNC here in your hometown of Chicago next month. Speaking of that, are you concerned at all about any kinds of security threats to that event? We've been reassured many times by the Secret Service and by CPD that they're prepared, they're ready for anything. Are you confident?
I was the lead in getting $75 million for Milwaukee and Chicago each to provide additional security, the manpower that's necessary, the equipment that's necessary to keep us safe. But anyone who's been briefed on this and understands the worldwide threats that exist, there are legitimate concerns. Our primary focus is keeping the people of Chicago and those who participate in the convention safe. But I think it's also important that we show the world that we can govern, that the party system can operate both in Milwaukee and Chicago. But understanding where the worldwide threats are right now with the international crises that are taking place, you'd have to have concerns. Plus, locally, we have heard from some even elected officials who don't even want the DNC here, or they want to shut it down. So those are all concerns. Everyone appreciates someone's First Amendment rights. We encourage that to protest peacefully. But again, there are those, I think, who have a mindset to disrupt and those who have a mindset of being violent, and that won't be tolerated.
So you're saying there are local elected officials that would prefer that this just get canceled or moved?
No, you must have heard of certain elected officials locally who did not want the DNC.
Sure. Back when it was being
well,
decided.
They wanted us to, you've heard them say they wanted to cancel it, right? Forgetting the fact that we want to showcase Chicago, that the host committee has talked about the positive 10-year impact that a political convention can have on a city, and the economic development, the job creation that takes place. And this is a city like all that are fiscally challenged. Having 50,000 people come to your city and spend money is a good thing. But it's also an amazing postcard to the rest of the world of just how spectacular our city is. So I would never want to discourage that. And again, we want to show that we can govern and we can be a party that gets things done.
And again, I'll put you on the spot again, when that Thursday comes at the convention where the Democrats will formally nominate their candidate for president, will that candidate be Joe Biden?
At this point, it's Joe Biden, unless he decides he's not that nominee. So we move forward with that understanding, unless there's a change.
And I should ask you about the ruling yesterday from the Supreme Court deciding that a president's official acts do have immunity from criminal prosecution. Unofficial acts do not, and now the debate starts, what's official versus unofficial. Obviously, former President Trump is going to claim everything he did was official, and he should have everything wiped away. How do you think it impacts the January 6th case?
See, I would differ. I think that the way that ruling is written gives a president carte blanche to do whatever they want. I think Sotomayor's dissent is pretty clear that they have absolute immunity on almost everything they want to do. Official, unofficial. Unofficial is so vague in terms of how this is written. I think Richard Nixon would never have faced any challenge and would have completed his term. But even the stuff that's purely acting as an individual, I think the way this is worded gives the president the opportunity to commit crimes and simply get away with it. If no one believes that, I would just remind them that the day the decision was put out, President Trump signaled that he was going to try to overthrow this decision, the jury's decision on him, finding him guilty.
In New York.
In New York. So that tells you, at least Trump thinks it means he has complete immunity of everything he does, even as a private citizen.
All right, Congressman Mike Quigley, very interesting days right now indeed. We're going to have to stay in touch with you and welcome you back anytime you'd like to come to Paris on Politics and Fox 32.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Up next on Paris on Politics.
Chicago's ticking financial time bomb is about to go off.
Everywhere you look, you have history of the Tribune.
Chicago's most unique skyscraper, restored and reimagined.
Ooh, behind the curtain.
During construction, countless time capsules were discovered.
Had a letter from the sports editor of the Chicago Tribune,
including the most significant relic from the biggest scandal in Chicago sports history. What other wonders does the tower hold? Streaming on your smart TV, only at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Search Fox Local on these streaming platforms. Download and watch today.
We're going to the Crown. Let's do it.
Well, this will come as no surprise to any Chicago resident, but the city is on the brink of a financial ticking time bomb. Long story short, the city's been putting hundreds of millions of dollars more into the underfunded pension systems. What happened? The debt actually increased by $1.8 billion to a record $37.2 billion. To put that into context, that's $14,000 per Chicago resident. Yikes. Ideally, a government wants to be at 100% funding. The Mendoza line for a government pension fund is usually considered to be around 70%. Go below that and trouble occurs. Where are Chicago's pension funds? Well, the firefighter pension fund is sitting at less than 22% funded right now. That means if every firefighter were to retire today, there would be enough money to cover 1/5 of the pension money owed to them. Police pension funding is also less than 22%. The municipal employee fund is at 22%, and the laborers pension fund taking the lead at 38.5% funding. So, what happens now? One watchdog, Civic Federation President Joe Ferguson, says it's time for the city to tighten its belt.
You capture that money and you dedicate it to pensions, working with unions in partnership to say, hey, we know the rules are kind of locked in on these ways that we do business, but how about for every $1, $2 that we save, $1 we're going to dedicate to actually shoring up the pensions, which we all know we're running out of.
And thanks to the state constitution, lawmakers cannot cut any pension benefits. And thanks to another state law, the city has until 2055 to get those levels to 90% funded. So Chicago's already putting about 15% of its budget into those funds. It could be more in the coming years. Another fiscal watchdog, Amanda Cass from DePaul University, says there are a few ways out of this mess, all of them painful.
The reason we're having to put in so much money into the pension systems today is because we shortchanged them for so long. And so this problem was decades in the making. And so it's unfortunately going to take decades to dig out of. And so that means sustaining a significant portion of the budget going to the pension systems. But kind of, I think slow and steady is the name of the game.
And not to scare you even more, but the pensions are invested in the stock market, and this underfunding comes on the heels of very strong returns. So if there's a market correction, or worse yet, a crash, it's doomsday for the city because you, the taxpayer, will have to make up those losses. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has put together a pension working group to come up with recommendations, but that group has yet to issue any kind of report, and we will eagerly await that.
Up next on Paris on Politics.
The sticker shock in the south suburbs, why property tax bills are more than doubling in some towns.
Chicago Sports Insiders.
I am so excited. This is gold right now. It's gold.
Streaming now on your smart TV at Fox 32 on Fox Local, your home of the Bears team.
Every Bears game will be must-see TV.
Following every step of a historic season.
Hardcore on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Download Fox Local and get in the game now.
Touchdown, Bears!
Search Fox Local on these streaming platforms and start watching today.
Some South suburban residents might feel their hearts sink a bit when they open their property tax bills. That's because they're about to owe a whole lot more to the government. In some towns, the bills more than doubled. This is all according to a new analysis from the Cook County Treasurer's Office. And let's take a look at a map of Cook County here. All you need to know is the darker the shade of blue, the higher the property tax hike. And in the southwest quadrant of the county, it's the largest hike in 30 years. And some low-income majority African-American towns are seeing the brunt of it. In Park Forest, those bills went up an average 56%. In Phoenix, 107%. And in Dixmoor, 122%. So what can residents do about it? Joining us is Cook County Treasurer Maria Pappas, whose office put out that study this week. Treasurer Pappas, always great to see you. What accounts for these giant hikes in these south suburban villages?
So every 3 years, different parts of the county are reassessed. And this year, the south and southwest suburbs were reassessed. So we, Hal Dardick and Todd Leidy, have a research team in the office, and what they did was analyze all 1.8 million bills. So they crunched the numbers, and the conclusion was that in the vast majority of the suburbs there, bills went up on average 19%, but in 15 suburbs, 13 of which are African American, the bills went up 30%. So you say, why? So here's why. If you're living in Dixmoor and there are 10 commercial buildings that are now all unrented on the bottom because these little businesses have pulled out of the neighborhood, and you're on a block where 3 people have moved out and left Illinois. They're like, I'm fed up, I'm out of here, okay? So now you have these 3 homes left on this one block. Everyone else on the block has left. And you have commercial buildings, because they are unoccupied, are paying less in taxes. So it's pretty simple. When commercial pays less, residences pay more. So in the south suburbs, you have this huge abandoned property problem, and you have all these little businesses that have exited the south suburbs.
And that's
so now what's happening is this poor homeowner is getting stuck with the bill.
And that's compounding a problem here, because these suburbs tend to be low income. Folks have trouble affording some of their tax bills, and the assessor Fritz Kagi had promised to shift the burden from residential, from industrial and commercial, from residential to industrial and commercial, and then promised that lower income folks were going to see a reprieve. So why isn't that happening?
It can't happen when you have unoccupied commercial buildings. Let's say, I'm going to bring it home. Let's take Water Tower, okay? It's a great article this week in Cranes. Water Tower is 55% unoccupied. Michigan Avenue's 30% unoccupied. So now you happen to have a condo in the Neiman Marcus building, or you have a condo in Water Tower. What's going to happen to your residence? Your residence is going to go up. And next year, Paris, this is the story, is next year. What's going to happen to the city of Chicago that's being reassessed? Because you have building after building after building after building on LaSalle Street, on Michigan Avenue, on State Street that are completely unoccupied. You walk down Michigan Avenue and you're like, what's here? A candy store? Gap is gone. Macy's is gone. Starbucks is gone. You know, you're like, what's left? Same thing on State Street.
So remind residents, especially in the south suburbs right now, what can they do if they want to lower this burden?
I hope you can see this. If you can't, you need to take a good look at this. This is called Where Your Money Goes. Can you see that?
Yep.
Where Your Money Goes. We spent an entire year programming where your money goes. Why? Because nobody's going to call my office anymore and complain. This bill shows you on this side the 14 governments that are charging you. And then on this side, it tells you whether the bill from that government went up or down. We've got this thing so well programmed on cookcountytreasure.com that you can go to this government, punch on this government, you can see its financial statements. But you know what the real problem is? Do you know what the real problem is? The problem with this tax bill is the same problem that we just experienced in the election. 20% of the people in Cook County turned out to vote. And trust me, people who get this bill, all 1.8 million, READ, people are not going to read this bill. So they don't know who's charging them what. And each of these governments, once a year, has a public hearing. The entire city of Dixmoor could go to city council and say, you know what, I don't like this, I like that, I don't. Nobody goes, nobody's ever at a public hearing. So we are impressing upon you, this is the 4-letter word result of the study and a year of programming. Don't just pay this bill. Even if your mortgage company's paying it, don't pay it. Open it up and read it, READ. If you read it, you will begin to understand that 60% of the funding on this bill is going to schools, and how the park district went up, whether or not your fire department, police department, where is your money going? You need to, if you're going to own a home, you need to take some responsibility for understanding where your money's going to.
All right, yeah, so individual homeowners' responsibility. I do open up those bills, I read them, and you have a breakdown, as you said, of the percentage going to schools, which tends to be the highest percentage, and it tends to go up every year. The percentage going to the fire department, the percentage going to pensions, which is another big issue that we've talked about. Maria, before we let you go, you have another talent here that was on display at the Pride Parade. I think we have some video. Where did you learn to twirl the baton quite like that?
Okay, so I was born and raised in Wheeling, West Virginia, in a small town of 2,000. And the only way to get out of West Virginia was to learn how to do things. So I taught myself how to twirl a baton. I actually competed in Pittsburgh, which was the largest city. I have 9 gold medals for baton twirling. So about 10 years ago, I had a friend and I said, will you drive my car in the gay pride parade? And he said, no, I don't want anyone to know I'm gay. I'm in the closet. So, you know, on the way out the door, I saw my baton and I thought, you know what? I don't have anybody to drive this car. I'm twirling. I went to the parade. I jumped in line. I had a Maria Pappas t-shirt and the rest is history. They play that tape in every bar in town. And I can walk down the street and people say to me, where's your baton? Which is kind of weird because I won't be remembered for this study, but I'll be remembered for the baton.
Treasurer Maria Pappas, always good to see you. Take care.
Always great to see you. Good luck in your new endeavor.
That's it for tonight's broadcast. Enjoy the rest of your 4th of July weekend. Be safe. Next week promises to be a landmark one, and we'll be right on top of all of it and have the full recap for you next week on Paris on Politics. So long, Chicago.
He's an Illinois sports legend.
Where I come from, it's about basketball, it's about getting back to the game.
From a historic championship run.
Y'all ain't just teammates, y'all brothers.
To training the next generation of ballers.
What was it like being on Sports Illustrated, the Jersey Pop photo?
They should have put our whole team on there.
CYD Brown is Chicago built.
Not scared of nothing, love challenges.
Streaming now at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Search Fox Local on these streaming platforms.
This swag we have in Chicago is we do it the best.